Hey guys, today I am going to critically analyze the Slánský trial. In 1952, 14 of the top communist leaders in Czechoslovakia were tried and found guilty of participating in a worldwide Zionist conspiracy. Most were executed. This trial is mostly forgotten now, and what if written simply dismissive allegations of false, the defendants of innocent. For example, the Wikipedia article claims, quote, the one-party communist state had to find or conjure up imaginary enemy from within to justify its continuing existence. This was the motive for the show trials. If it's true, are these people actually innocent? No, clearly not. Slánský himself was one of the leading proponents of Stalinism in Czechoslovakia and tortured many people. But are they innocent of the charges of the trial? It cannot be understated how big the Slánský trial was in its day. It was a massive story, and in my opinion, the Slánský trial was the pivotal moment where Zionist support shifted away from communism, away from the USSR, and towards America. The story starts in Hungary. The Slánský trial was immediately preceded by the 1949 trial of the Hungarian communist Rajk László and his co-defendants. During the trial, the defendants described that elements of the Zionist movement in the People's Democracy were secretly working with American intelligence, and in particular, this was happening in Czechoslovakia. However, the focus of the Hungarian trial was about connections with Yugoslav leader Tito and Western intelligence. Stalin was greatly concerned by the possibility of a people's republics, especially the Western ones like Czechoslovakia, aligning away from Moscow. The fact that a large number of the defendants in this trial of Hungarian communists were Jewish was not surprising and did not indicate anti-Semitism, since the majority of Hungarian communist leadership were Jewish. The Hungarian communists who arrested László were Jewish themselves. He was accused of plotting the murder of Erno Guró, who was also born to Jewish parents and would eventually become Hungarian prime minister in 1956. The accusation was, "You are a Titoist. You are conspiring with Western intelligence against Stalin, against Moscow." In the court transcript, Zionism comes up 5 times. Tito, almost 500. But it does come up, with one defendant admitting that he had spied with a Zionist for the Americans. The Slánský trial took a radically different tone than the Hungarian one. Slánský was found guilty and executed for organizing a Zionist conspiracy in service of Anglo-American imperialism. Of the 14 defendants, 11 were Jewish, most were high-level Czechoslovak communist leaders, and some members of Zionist organizations. Slánský, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia, was accused of planting these men, his alleged co-conspirators, in key positions in the Department of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, Security, Defense in the Communist Party apparatus. The accusation was the Zionist and Zionist organizations were attempting to Tito-ize Czechoslovakia. Alright, so let's get into the trial. One of the most explosive revelations emerged from the testimony of Szymon Orenstein. He described that in 1947, prior to the establishment of Israel, a secret meeting was held in Washington, attended by President Truman, Dean Eshon, David Ben-Gurion, who would become Israel's first prime minister, Moshe Sharet, who would become Israeli foreign minister, and Henry Morgenthau Jr. At this meeting, Orenstein stated, Ben-Gurion and Sharet agreed that Zionist organizations would be available for espionage and other subversive activities in the People's Democracy in exchange for United States support for Zionist aims in Palestine. This was probably the most explosive revelation during the trial. But since the trial concluded, we have access to more information. For example, further details were revealed in the 1994 book, The Secret War Against the Jews, How Western Espionage Betrayed the Jewish People. It's a very philo-Semitic book, and it gets really spicy. The relevant section described how prior to 1948, Israel had a major problem. The Anglo-Americans didn't want to arm them, and neither did Stalin. They desperately needed weapons. So, they acquired weapons any way they could, In America, Slánský was a major provider. However, it was Czechoslovakia where they got their most significant weaponry, including the Air Force that turned out to be so critical in defeating the Arabs. They also got over a dozen tanks from Czechoslovakia. The acquisition of crucial Czech airplanes was done by one man, known to us as Robert Maxwell. The story of how this Zionist, working for British intelligence, worked with Zionists in communist Czechoslovakia proves some of the allegations in the Slánský trial of true, in my opinion. Maxwell, born in Czechoslovakia, was well connected with the Czech communist leadership, especially Vladimir Klementis, the soon-to-be foreign minister of Czechoslovakia after the communist coup. By the end of World War II, Maxwell was working for British intelligence. He was actually an interrogator in Spandau prison because he knew many languages. But what MI6 didn't know was that Maxwell was a double agent working for Israel. Through his work in MI6, Maxwell learned that the British were supporting the Catholic anti-communist Slánský in Czechoslovakia. British obviously didn't want Czechoslovakia to fall behind the Iron Curtain. This Slánský guy was very anti-communist, popular, had a lot of support in Czechoslovakia. Maxwell betrayed Britain by telling all this to his communist contacts in Czechoslovakia. They used this information to seize power in the 1948 coup. In exchange for this information, and due to their Zionist sympathies, the Czechoslovak communists would arm Zionist groups in Palestine. Well, Maxwell wasn't alone. Other Zionists were working on this project as well, from the secretive Max group to American Zionists who flew American cargo planes from Yugoslavia. The Communist Minister of Defense, one of the trial defendants who were found guilty of participating in the worldwide Zionist conspiracy, quote, threw the entire weight of the military establishment behind the Jewish supply effort. An airfield in Czechoslovakia, near Žatec, had been put at the disposal of a Haganah, an ultra-violent Zionist paramilitary group, and was under the command of Yehuda ben Koren. So with all this information now available, why do academics, historians, everyone say that the allegations that the Communist Minister of Defense participated in a worldwide Zionist conspiracy are false? In my opinion, the argument that he was motivated by getting US dollars doesn't make any sense. The guy was clearly risking his life. In total, the Czechoslovaks supplied over 100 million rounds of ammunition, almost 100 high-tech aircraft. Don't think you can say that they didn't do this and that they weren't motivated by Zionism. You could argue, as the author of the book The Secret War Against Jews, How Western Espionage Betrayed the Jewish People, that it shouldn't be a crime to secretly conspire to help Israel. But Stalin didn't see it that way. After Maxwell, he was given a state funeral in Israel, buried in the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. His funeral was attended by the president, prime minister, and no less than 6 serving and former heads of Israeli intelligence. Robert Maxwell was one of the greatest heroes in Israeli history. Maxwell, however, is perhaps most well known now for his connections to Jeffrey Epstein, the American who was trafficking underage women, likely in order to create blackmail on people such as Bill Clinton, who flew on his plane at least 27 times, 5 times without the Secret Service. As for Stalin, he died of a stroke a mere 3 months after the conclusion of the Slánský trial. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do widzenia.